Hi, my name is Jeremy, and today we're going to take a look at a game from one of my favorite designers. That is Emerald from Rudiger Dorn. And this game, I believe, is now currently out of print. It was published by Abacus Spiel, and it was published in 2002. So it's a bit of a classic, and it is for ages 10 and up. Between 2 to 5 players. The box says it plays in about 45 minutes, but realistically, it's going to play in about 20 to 30 minutes, I find. It's one of my preferred fillers, and I'm going to just show you a quick rules explanation about it, and then we'll come back and I'll tell you my thoughts on it. Okay, so this is the setup for Emerald at the beginning of the game. It's set up for a 3-player game, and essentially what the game entails is you have a color of these adventurers, and you're going to race them along this path through this cave, which is guarded by this dragon, into the dragon's den to get treasures. So, if the dragon ever captures your adventurers, however, they'll be captured and sent to his cave here. So essentially on your turn, you're going to be able to move up to 2 of your characters, and the way that that works is that if you move a character, let's say I'm blue, whatever space they're on, and these are considered 5 different spaces at the start space, all adjacent to his first space. Let's say I move him, he would move a number equal to the number of pawns on the space that he's on. So here he would move 1, 2, 3, and then I can move this one as my second movement on my turn, 1, 2, 3. Now on my next turn, if I chose to move one of these 2, they would move 1, 2, because there were 2 pawns on that space. And so, over the course of the game, characters are going to be progressing along this track. One exception to the 2 movement rule is that if ever you pick up one of these cards, which I'll explain in a moment, that will immediately end your turn, even if it's your first movement. So let's move these guys down here, and let's say these here. So let's say this was the beginning of the turn, and I was the blue player. And if I moved this guy here 2 spaces, 1, 2, I'd be in the dragon's cave. And you'll notice there are these gem cards set up on the top of the cave, and there are these gold cards set up on the bottom of the cave. Those cards are going to be how you score during the game. So upon moving into here, the blue player would be able to choose either the gem card that's face up or the gold card that's face up. And there are a limited number in each spot, either 2 or 3, depending on the space. So the way the gold cards work is that those are going to be points as shown on them at the end of the game. So this one, for example, is going to be worth 2 points. The way the gem cards work is each gem card is going to be worth 1 point, but if you collect the gem cards, you're eligible for these bonus cards. Most of them are rewarded at the end of the game. This one's rewarded to the first player to collect 4 different colors of gems, and it's worth 4 points. And these others, there's one for each color, they're each worth 4 points, and they go to the person who holds the majority of each color of gem. In case of a tie, nobody gets the bonus, but if you have the most of any of the colors of gems, you'll get one of those, which is worth 4 points. One other complication is that by moving here, which is essentially along the spaces by this wooden piece here, that will trigger a dragon movement. The dragon is going to want to protect its treasure. So let's say, as a blue player, I've taken this 2, then I would flip up the next card, and then, because I'm adjacent to this wooden piece, I would roll the die, which would move the dragon. So this die here, it only has 1s, 2s, and 3s on it. So if I rolled a 2, the dragon would move 1, 2, and it would land on a space without anybody on it, so nothing would happen. But let's say I'd rolled a 3, the dragon would go 1, 2, 3, and now it's on a space with my piece on it. So that would mean the dragon would capture the pawn. If that happens, the pawn goes here. If it doesn't happen, or however, if the player chooses, they could turn in any gold coin and not a gem coin or a gem card, any gold coin card, to bribe the dragon to be safe. So simply, what would happen would be the player would turn in the 2 that would go out of the game, and then their pawn would remain on their board. So if the dragon would move again from here, let's say another player moved on here and triggered it, you would roll again. Look, there's a 3. what would happen is, since it's at the end of the movement here, it would turn and then it would go 1, 2, 3. Another thing that affects the dragon's movement is after every time it moves, regardless of whether or not it captures a pawn, this slides down, and this becomes the range where the dragon will move. So over the course of the game, this is going to move closer and closer to the dragon's lair, and it'll just keep changing where it's guarding. So these spaces up here would be free, and you wouldn't have any risk of being caught by the dragon, but down here would be more dangerous near the end of the game. So let's say this happened again, and the player rolled the 3 again. 1, 2, 3. So the black player rolled a 3. The black player, since they rolled it, gets to determine which pawn the dragon will attack. It'll only attack one. So they would obviously choose the blue player, and then the blue player would either have to turn in a card or have its pawn taken out of the game. There's no penalty for being taken out of the game. However, it does impede your progress, keeping you from picking up treasures and keeping you from reaching the treasure chamber. So one of the game end triggers is that 4 pawns will reach this area here, the treasure chamber. When you do that with one of your pawns, you're going to get to claim one of these 4 cards, which is worth 5 points. So if ever 4 pawns make it into here, the game would end immediately. And if ever the dragon captures all but one of any player's pawns, the game will also end. So those are the 2 game end conditions. Once the game is over, then you're going to tally up your points, which are going to be the points that you've gotten on the gold cards that you still have remaining, that you haven't used to bribe the dragon. 1 point per card that you've collected with a gem on it. If you've collected the 4-point card for collecting one of each gem, you'll get that. And then any majority bonuses that you get, as well as any points that you've collected for making it all the way to the end of the board. The player who has the most points at the end of that will win. Alright, so that is Emerald. And like I said, that's one of my favorite filler games, and you could perhaps see why. It's very highly interactive, has really simple rules, but it stays exciting because of that dragon moving, always changing your fate. Because the board setup requires you to race for cards, there's a bit of gamesmanship, and then also it's highly interactive, both because you could steal cards from each other's, you could move the dragon, and I guess also because your movements are going to be determined by the number of players that are on your space. So you might be set up to pick up the treasure card that you need or the gem that you need to complete your set, but another player before your turn comes around might move out of the space, changing the distance that your adventurer can travel. So that really simple mechanic actually makes the game extremely interactive and a lot of fun. I think that the game is somewhat forgotten because it's about 15 years old, but it really holds up well as any filler that you would be likely to buy nowadays, and I think that you could find used copies of it pretty easily. And one thing that I would note is that the game does scale nicely from 2 to 5 players. With 2 players, each player controls two sets of pawns, so 8 pawns total. With 3 or 4 players, each player gets 5 pawns, and with 5 players, each player gets 4 pawns. So the game doesn't really get much longer or much shorter depending on the number of players. And like I said, the game box says that it lasts about 45 minutes, but realistically it won't take that long, especially once you've played the game before. So all in all, I would say Emerald is something I would definitely recommend if you're looking for a lighter game that you could play quickly and that will give you a lot of interaction with other players and a lot of laughs when the dragon snatches up one of your opponents. So it's a classic game from Rudiger Dorn, who has a ton of classic games under his belt, and I'd suggest you check it out. I think you'd enjoy it. Thanks.